always really excited to do these sort of watch throughs. I already watched the game a couple of times anyways, but it's always kind of fun for me to kind of go and just kind of show like what my thought process is with these games in general. With the North Carolina A&T Wake game, I kind of just came out of it like kind of meh, to be quite honest. I wasn't over the moon about anything. I also wasn't super just kind of despondent about most things, really anything. I don't think there's really a thing that made me just kind of just like upset, or like I'm just like like this is going to be a bad omen for us of the year. As a whole, on offense, obviously, from people who followed my tweets, I very much enjoyed how Hank Bachmeier looked. I thought that was, he looked a lot better than what he did in practice. I don't think he was bad in practice, but I think he showed definitely a higher, level of command than he had in practice. I thought Kern was fine. I definitely thought he got hurt a bit, not a bit, but a lot by some drops and some protection. Especially Damon got just kind of detonated once, and I definitely thought that hurt a bit because it and I think Dave Clawson said it as well. He felt like it wasn't quote unquote fair for Kern. Kind of what happened with him there. I get a little back and forth there because I think this is something that I think this is probably the last game that you can. Speaking of Virginia, this is really the last game you can really kind of play around with the quarterback right now, in terms of like, hey, like have like a little short leash here and there. I think honestly, if I had a prediction of what's going to happen, I think you start out with Hank Bachmeier on Saturday against Virginia, have him on a somewhat of a short leash. I don't think you can put him on just like the first mistake and then pull him out. I don't think you can do a thing of 3 series for Hank, 3 series for Kern. I think you need to kind of start making the decision. It's a little tough with like Kern because it wasn't really his fault that the offense didn't really move as well. I thought they'll probably show up here, but that pass to Walker was I think he could have taken an ounce off of it, but ultimately the hits Walker in both the hands. Walker, he kind of slowed up a little bit. That's got to be something that he catches. That I'm not really blaming Kern for that one. And so I understand like, hey, we need to make sure everyone gets a fair shot. But at the end of the day, like you've got only 11 more games. You can't sit here and play around with the quarterback position too much. So I would personally just, what I think is going to happen, I think you'll still see an or with Michael Kern and Hank Bachmeier. I think the names might be flipped, but I definitely think that you're about to reach the point where you can't really play around with it. But I was encouraged by a lot of what I saw. I was encouraged by Hank. I thought Kern did some good stuff, even though it didn't really work out. Running the ball, I thought they were good. Thought the pass protection was solid. I was really, really enjoying the pass protection and run blocking. Defensive-wise, in the first half, they stunk. They were just not good at all in the first half, especially up front. And I thought in the second half, I went back and kind of charted it that, in the first half, when the first team, when at least 50% of the line was the first team defensive linemen, so Shane Davis, Kendron Wayman, Kevin Pointer, Bryce Gaines, like if the line was half of those guys or more. In the first half, those guys gave up 7.1 yards per play. Second half, those guys only gave up 1.73. A lot of the damage in the second half was when Wick was trying to steal snaps and steal reps and see, how much could their second string defensive line hold up. It didn't work out well, and that's upsetting. But, if you're in the second half and your first string defensive line's only giving up, well under 2.2 yards per play, that's an improvement. I thought that was solid. The linebackers were disappointing. I was very, very, I was upset about how they looked. Felt like no one really got comfortable. I mentioned this on the Demon Dean Dodgers board, but I think that's more of a blip than it is a trend moving forward. So I look at it from like this perspective. You got a guy like Branson Combs, and I actually believe I pulled up his grades. I did. Branson Combs, the last 3 years against FCS competition, or even lower FBS competition, depending on who he's played, has been a very, very, very good player. I'm not so sure I'm ready to say, well, he had a bad game against an FCS opponent at that matter, and then he's not going to pan out to be good moving forward. I think that logic doesn't really work for me. He's shown to be very good, especially against that level of competition. I wrote about it when I previewed the linebackers. It felt like some nerves were going on there. I thought he was better towards the end of the game, got a little more settled. Dylan Hazen the same sort of way. Dylan Hazen has done well against solid competition. Like he's never really graded as like a super high, in the 80s, but like against Georgia Tech, it was a good team, graded out very well. Was fine against Virginia Tech. Pittsburgh was meh, and that was just last year. The year before that, across the board, very, very good team, very good player. I just think he had a bad game. I think Quincy Bryant had a bad. I think the linebackers seemingly just had a bad game, and I'm willing to bet on guys that we've seen perform well having better games because it's if it was just practice, then I'm especially after last year, I'm more of like, hey, it was like they look good in practice, but then transfer over. Like between Branson, between Dylan, between Quincy Bryant, between Draco, we've seen them be very good in games against competition, not just when you can't actually tackle somebody. And I'm willing to bet that comes back out versus guys just all just somehow deciding to regress. I think that's not really a great bet. So we're gonna get into this, and if things are too loud, let me know. Happy to adjust anything. Here we go. I hate tunnel screens like this because I think they're just so I don't know if they work well for Wake's style of offense. I personally don't like tunnel screens. I hate them, but I mean, it's a lot of this is just it's not well blocked out in the end. It looks like both Horatio and Harry Lodge get the same guy, and you're basically asking at this point Taylor to make one person miss. And while I like Taylor, I don't know if that's the best option for there. And so there's too much that can break down for me, especially with this type of Wake team that I'm not really a huge fan of tunnel screens like that. Jesus Christ, who was that? I should know who it is. It's, of course, it's Kevin Pointer. So this is where you see stuff that's really good and stuff that's really bad. So stuff that's really good, right here, Kevin Pointer. Just watch how he just gets off the ball. That's insane. He has to get double teamed. And this is where I was upset kind of with guys like, the linebackers, because Combs takes a very, very, very poor angle. I'm not really sure why he tries to get sucked in too much. He's trying to, I guess, take the middle of the way, but there's no one setting the edge. And if he's supposed to be out here, he's gotta make sure that this running back can't get outside, gets sucked in just a little too much. And that running back's very good. Like he was an AC program. Like Kenji Christian was a really good running back, and he's got talent.
But it's also harder to get guys, and I think we'll talk a lot about that tonight. Drops back. We'll talk a lot.
I think Demond ran the ball very, very well. He was I think he had 6 snaps in pass protection today, on Thursday, and he did not perform well. You definitely want to see him perform better there. Right here was not a good rep from him. He's he gets there, and then he's got a good angle on him, and then just kind of whiffs a bit, which then forces Kern to have to throw after that ball not really the way he wants to. Good on Kern though, because I mean that's a solid throw from him, especially with the guy basically just tearing him down. Solid throw from him. If Claiborne actually gets a good pass protection rep there, Morin's still running. I thought this was actually a really good reset from the right tackle. It looks like he gets pushed back at first, but then he does a really, really good job of resetting and really getting the push in there. So you don't love the initial stuff from 77 there, but you know it'll excuse me, for 72 there, but that'll play. And Demond is just so fast. Demond is so fast. Like him moving laterally is such a weapon this year that you know even if the play looks dead right, it might not be, and that happened a few times in this game of where it was like, man, like he can make someone miss really easily. Cam Height, what are we doing here? What are we doing here, champ? Really good. I mean, solid pass. Um, things are open. Cam Height just kind of gets thrown to the ground. um, I definitely enjoyed Harry Lodge's snaps a little more than Cam Height's in this one. I think Cam Height still be good, but that can't happen. But ultimately, everyone else gets a good push. Fine. Moran gets open. It's what you want.
Over the top, you can see
Jesus. First, you actually do get a good push up the middle. I think left tackle through center has a very good push up the middle. If it was like a first and goal from like 2 or from the 3, you get in pretty easily. But Demond is just insane. I'm gonna run this back in like 0.5. Like that's just mental from Demond. That's so good from Demond. I mean, there has been a feeling that he is the best running back they've had, not just in the last couple of years, whatever. Like since Dave Clawson's been here. And while I know people love Kenneth Walker and everything, I mean, Kenny couldn't do that. That wasn't something that. And again, it's North Carolina A&T, and so I get myself, obviously I want, and I'm pretty sure, there's definitely I would say like people, really enjoy what the potential of Damon Claiborne can be. And I think we got a little bit of a taste of against NCAA. Is this a U.S. fixture? I hate you, Jake. That's fun, and this is like a lot of the stuff that they want to do with Kern. I want to watch this pass pro from Damon though. That's good from Damon. Hey, that's what you want to see out of Damon Claiborne, right there. That's what you want to see. Takes him on. There's not really a discussion of if the rusher's ever going to come. He's automatically coming in. That's what you want to see. But I love this little trips formation here. I love this. I think it's so much fun. It's great on third downs because it just creates so much confusion for everybody. And we have a guy like Deuce, and they did a lot last year. I think they had a pretty similar play against ODU that they ran with Keyshawn Williams that pretty much had the same sort of result. When you have like a really quick guy that can just hit an outright like that, it's so much fun. So much fun. Like you again, it's NCAA, but you can't teach that. You can't teach that from Devon. And this is stuff I didn't love. And let's see if I can get it right before the snap calls. Yeah, so I mean, this is one where you have 18 in there, so obviously it's gonna be 48 in there. So you're missing Jasheen on this play, and it's pretty clear where NCAA is gonna run this ball. They're not. I mean, Kendron wasn't good in this game, but if you have a choice between running at Kendron or running at a rising sophomore, you're gonna run there, and they did that. And I think Quincy kind of finds himself in no man's land a little bit too. Still makes a good tackle, but it felt a lot like the linebackers just weren't in the best places, and I'm hopeful that that is a blip. So you see why I like these little trips. It doesn't really matter. You can put them tight. You can put them at the hash. It doesn't really matter where you put them. It's why I love these. It's again, they just create so much confusion for everybody. So no matter what, like you should probably get someone open. You see 13. I think there's a little bit of confusion here. It looks like for some reason, I think 24. If I had to put anyone, Dylan kind of finds himself, I think, as kind of a spy, but it really feels like he's just not really not there's not really any he's not really doing anything. Like he's just kind of there, just making sure he's not running. But then you have like an entire area of the field that's just kind of open because of it, and that hurts.
They really like what he can bring to this offense.
Oh my God, yeah, Quincy, buddy. You see, Quincy just comes up here and just kind of. I know he's taking on a offensive lineman, but ugh, eek. And this is like the difference of about a second. So if you look at Jasheen here, Jasheen wins his rep. Jasheen just completely wins his rep. Um, it's just unfortunately they are playing just so far off. And that's part of what cover three is just going to be is they play so far off that unfortunately like routes like that are going to be open if they don't get home fast enough. And so I think Devon's doing fine in coverage for being in a nickel. That's why nickel's playing it's so hard because there's not really a ton you can do when you're lined up here. Because when you're lined up in this nickel in general, you have nowhere to really force them anywhere. Like he can basically come across the middle and you can't really do much about it. If he tries to go on a streak, hope you can keep up with him. He could kind of drill down towards the sideline. Still could do that. You don't really have if you're a boundary corner, you can basically just say, look, like I can cover everything towards the hash because if you're asking your quarterback to throw somewhere over here, it's gonna have to be a perfect throw. Same thing down here. This one a little bit harder as well. But if you're this nickel, it's so hard to cover that, and especially when you're asking them to play so far off. And I think Wake Forest wanted to. I think Wake was trusting their deep defensive line to get home. They didn't right there, and if they don't get home, you're gonna give that up. I think Devon probably could have played that a little closer than he was, but I mean they're asking the DL to get home and they didn't. Sorry. That was bad from Pointer. I thought Kevin Pointer had a pretty good game, and I know he gets double team here, and he ends up on his ass. Just, Dylan though, and that's another time where I see a linebacker that just ends up like probably not where he should be. I think Kendron should make this tackle though, like, and that's where it's like, well, Kevin gets kind of washed. I think Kendron should make this tackle. Dylan finds himself in an awkward position. Kendron doesn't make the tackle, and now it's off to the races. And for a team that like historically has tackled really, really well, it was really frustrating, especially in the first half, to see the entire first string not, besides Nick Anderson, because Nick graded pretty well. It was really upsetting to watch them not tackle well. This play is frustrating. This play is frustrating, and I wish I had taken the clip. So essentially, this is a one-on-one. All Devon needs to do is make this tackle. It's frustrating not just because he doesn't make the tackle here. It's frustrating because he made the tackle earlier in the game. I wish I had pulled the clip, but he made that exact same tackle earlier in the game. And so I felt like, okay, cool, you can. It felt like, okay, cool, like I can trust you to make this tackle. And then now it's like, well, okay, you did it now, and then you couldn't do it again. That's the consistency I get. You're a young player, and it felt a lot like Devon, especially was someone that was like playing like he was starting for the first time in college, and so it's frustrating that he made that play earlier on the drive, but doesn't here, and that's the difference between this being 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, and this being a touchdown. Because if he makes the same play, I mean, honestly, it might be 3rd and 11, because he makes the same play earlier, but doesn't there, takes like a bad angle at it, and off to the races. Yeah, that's frustrating. I think Devon will be good because, like I said, he's made play earlier in the game. I think he'll be fine. I think he calmed down a little bit in the second half and played a little more like not someone starting for the first time. We get our Hank snaps. Okay, Tate, buddy, pal. Tate just he got a little too amped there, but and that's something we saw a bit from Hank as well in practice was him being able to scramble. I I have -5 idea of how this is not a face mask. I you know First off, in practice, if this was practice, Hank probably throws that ball here, and it's maybe a spectacular catch, maybe it's a interception. Those are the types of throws that I kind of was talking about before. That Hank loves to throw these tight windows, but he obviously doesn't in this game. I I There's physically no way Hank can move that. Like Hank's body moves like this, and there's a ref standing right there. This is the one. This is the guy that I'm just like, you probably should have called this face mask. I don't know how it's not, but I thought everything. I thought it was blocked fine. I thought NCNT covered the routes really well, which is why Hank was stepping up and trying to make something happen. Should have been a first down, but unfortunately, instead of that, Hank almost has a broken neck. Fun. I just don't. ACC refs are my favorite. I love them. And this is just people getting washed. And this is, yeah, you're supposed to. That's another linebacker that's supposed to have. Yeah, I'm not really understanding. Well, actually, that's Marcus Rankin. Not really understanding why. I guess he's trying to set the edge, so that's why he ends up being taken on by an offensive lineman. But yeah, it's hard because then now Nick basically has to just clean this up, and thankfully Nick cleaned it up, and it's not a huge gain, but like that's just the defensive line kind of gets a little bit washed there across the board. I know you're only running 3 down, but that's tough there. Yeah, that's honestly just blocked well. I think that's blocked well. I think Quincy possibly could make that play. Um, you'd love it if Jamari on this run was able to get a little more physical here and kind of disrupt it. Instead, he gets pushed back a little bit. That stunk. I would have liked for a better game out of Jamari. I didn't think he had his finest moment. And again, it's the guy who's starting for the first time. It seems to be a trend. Nick Anderson was everywhere. Nick was everywhere. He reads this extremely well. I was really pleased with Nick. I thought coverage wise it is what it is. I thought he covered. I thought he tackled really damn well. That's excellent. And this is another play where it's like you feel like everyone did really well until they didn't. So I believe that's Zach Lavakian. Um, Very very nice kid. Both the DTs get really good penetration there. They get insanely good penetration. They just don't finish. Like they just they don't get enough there, and especially is that another linebacker I see. Yeah, you see Branson kind of get taken on by a linebacker by an offensive lineman and kind of push through. And instead of it being 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, maybe even 3rd and 9, if you can get him a little bit faster, 6-yard gain. That just can't happen. I thought Branson had that one. I thought he played that one just well. It was he overcommits a little bit too much, and that game of inches. That game of inches. This is just a good catch. This was nice. This is a bullet. Slocum hits the hell out of him. Like, good job. Like, good job, 11. Like, sometimes you can tip your hat to the other team. That's one. Good job. And another linebacker, Quincy. Excuse me, that's Draco. I'm not gonna blame Quincy, but it's Draco. Draco's overamped, gets into the hole perfectly, and just overruns it. All he has to do is he doesn't need to go and try to make a huge play. All he has to do is just stay in the running lane, and he meets him there. It's 3rd and long, but he just overplays his hand, and like that's something we just consistently see out of the linebackers on. And they were really good last year, and obviously, like, you're missing Jacob Roberts when you're replacing with Combs, but Quincy was good last year, and Dylan was good last year, and they just had a bad game. Kendron just falls. He gets clipped and just falls. Kendron did not have his finest game on Thursday. I'll say that. So Kevin had two tackles that you think he's made in the past, and this was one of them where he gets off pretty easily. He was meant to, and then he doesn't really overrun it. He's supposed to bring him down here and just doesn't finish it, um, and that sucks because it's again 3rd down, and I think that's the big thing. Like they kept one thing you don't want to do is continue to let either 1st downs happen, or instead of it being second, like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, it being 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. And that's what kept happening, especially in the first half. Second half, they were a lot better about it. The first half, the defense was just, they had chances to keep NCNT in 3rd and 7 and 3rd and 8, and just couldn't do it. And then they get a break. I'm actually glad that Kendron doesn't try to dive head first in that. I think he could have gotten the ball. I think he would have gotten head first into the quarterback, and that never ends well. So yeah, this is where it's game of inches. I think Combs takes a perfect angle here. This more than likely should be a tackle, and then ends up not being one. And it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It ends up being 3rd and 18. But this is where these are the plays where I kind of don't really care too much about what the yardage is, because when I look at everybody, I think KP still plays with his hair on fire like that. It looks like Bryce Gagnes comes around and is the really reason that he flushes him out of the pocket. But you never gave up. You didn't give up an explosive, and that's something I think they are very much concerned about, and something I'm concerned about moving forward is, what are the explosives you're giving up? It's 3rd and 18. This is where you live to fight another day. If he ends up getting, 9 yards there, no one really cares. It's fine. You'd love a sack or something there, but if it goes from 3rd and 18 to 4th and 9, you won the fight. Oh, this is the play I put on Twitter, and there's such everything so good about this. I loved every part of this. So obviously the very fun part is Demond, because right there he should be kind of dead to rights. Should be just completely dead to rights. Isn't obviously. You see Horatio here his defender. Great from him. Taylor Marin's ready to block. Keep an eye here on Harry Lodge. Look at our guy Harry, just mowing a guy down. That's the type of effort you need out of people, especially on plays like that. Is because if he doesn't, if Harry, only kind of half-ass gets this block here, then at the very least, 33 can still have a chance. If he's forcing Demond to like slow down even a little bit, 33 can come in and make a tackle, and this is a gain of a couple, and everyone's like, I don't know. But because he gets this block, it allows Demond trusts him to get this block. Demond can just keep running, full speed through that, and so check plus from Harry Lodge. I think he earned the fact that he earned being the starting tight end. So I'm really happy with Harry. I know he didn't grade well for PFF, but with tight ends, I'm always just like, especially in this system, because you can't grade them normally like you would. They're asked to do different things. Now this is a tight window throw. I love it from Hank because you got to make these throws. Throws it perfectly. Be careful. You got it. So, a good point that I want to make there. You see them holding their hands to their ears. That's so they can hear the electronic communication from Warren Ruggiero, who's in the booth. The defense will do it as well, so they can hear it from Brad Lambert. I have a hunch and a bet, and I've been making the bet. It worked out pretty well in week 1. That unless you're playing a just really bad team, you are going to the games aren't going to be as high scoring this year. I've had this bet that games aren't going to be as high scoring this year unless someone's defense is just that bad. Coaches are now telling teams hey, let's analyze what you're seeing, things of that nature. And I think especially when you're playing, against say LSU, USC last night, when you're playing in these times games where they're throwing out all these different coverage looks, and you're playing a nice fun chess match, you are saying hey, let's take our time, let's we can talk about what just happened there, good or bad, and then you get up to the communication shuts off, I believe 15 seconds before the play ends, and then you can say, hey, okay, here's what our play is. Look for this, and this. And so now, basically, a lot of teams, when they're not going super speed, and, Wake's can go super speed against an NT, the chess match isn't really needed there. But now a lot more teams are taking their time and saying, hey, this is what I need you to see, because you couldn't do that before. And I think for the time being, a lot more teams are going to be a little bit slower and more methodical, because now they can analyze with their quarterback and say, okay, cool, let's see what's going on here. Excuse me. And then we can evaluate there. So I think we're going to see a little less scoring in general this year, except just the only exceptions are when you're playing bad teams. Look at our guy 71. First off, Donnie, welcome back. Look at our guy 71. Gets out there, he controls, gets out there, gets a little block, finishes, and that finish right there is actually kind of what opens it, because obviously Donnie gets off of that tackle, but if he doesn't finish this, that's probably the guy that brings Donnie down. Doesn't matter, and then Donnie is off to the races. Again, it's North Carolina A&T. I'm going to say it as many times as I have to. It's North Carolina A&T for things that are both good and bad. It is, take everything with a grain of salt. But, when Donovan's healthy, Donovan's good. Who leaves him here? Kendron Fonz. This is where I go. This is just a bust, and I think this one feels like more of a miscommunication than it is anything else, because Nick finds himself coming down as well. So either this safe, if Nick's actually supposed to come down this way, either you're supposed to drop back, which I don't think is the case because there's no way you're not trusting him to be fast enough to get back here. You're supposed to rotate this way, or Nick isn't supposed to be down here. I lean this safe. 6 is supposed to be is supposed to rotate a little quicker than that. That would be my guess, because there's no way you're just actively leaving that part of the seam essentially just wide open. And I think it makes sense, if Rushan just got a little bit too sucked in and just didn't get the call, or just didn't know where he needed to be. But yeah, so that's my impression of what's going on here. Is if Nick's supposed to be this far downhill, which maybe he is, maybe he isn't. If he is, then Rushan's got to get all the way back here. That being said, I'm not so sure if that's I might be wrong there. That's something, not having the play call, fine. But that would be the one I would lean. Either Nick's not supposed to be all the way down here, or Rushan didn't get back as far as he needed to. So that's how that gets open. It's not on the corners. That's a normal, just little. You're trying to basically not tip your hand on who's actually going to blitz here, and one of them was wrong. I don't know who I'm leaning Rushan. Rushan can hit though. You can do one thing. He can hit. Damon's so close. I really hope he doesn't have the Christian Turner problem of like shoestring tackles get him. But no, I like his vision here. He's patient. He's patient. Gets through the hole. Really happy with Damon. Really happy there. This one I thought he got a little. It's still obviously a good game. This is nitpicky. I also think the run blocking is just better. I think they get much more of a push. They end up like opening up a massive hole there for him. So I would like Deuce to kind of get a little more aggressive in the run blocking there. I know, but he's also trying to figure out, hey, there's 3 of them. Can I just field as many as I can at once? Speaking of wide receivers run blocking, take a look at Donovan Green right here. Like he gets initially like kind of pushed back, and then just Donovan, we missed you. I don't know how Donnie stayed up, to be quite honest here. I love this little kind of. It's not a full zag, a full zig route, but I like that from Donnie. I like that play call. Uses quickness. I do think, per usual, Wake got a little bit too conservative once they got past midfield. They had all their timeouts. I'm not really the most fond of the way they handled like the end of it, but I did like this little improvisation from Hank. He stepped up, didn't put the ball at risk. The spin is gonna annoy most quarterback coaches, but gets 9 yards on the scramble, it gets out of bounds. I can't complain too much there. I really wish they had shown on this condensed version. They show the play before this, because the play before this, it should have been an easy first down, and they just blocked like crap. And you could see Hank kind of chewing them out. I was like, hey, like, get your shit together. They got their stuff. They got their act together in this one. They very much got their act together on that one, and Last year, like honestly, like even against like an A&T level team, I don't know if they get this fourth and two. That's how bad they were on short yardage last year. Um, I do like how everything's just so tight, but they did a good job blocking here. Cam Height, especially, can't he instead of trying to be too aggressive here with the rusher, he just kind of helps guide him towards the right, and that opens up everything Damon needs. So that was much better. And again, last year I don't know if they get that. Last year they had problems remembering what the actual play call was. So happy with that. Another tunnel screen. At least if you're gonna run into Deuce, and again, like, I think Taylor Marin, obviously he ran a kickback, great. I think Deuce is just a little more. Guys like Deuce and Donovan are just a little better and shiftier in terms of being able to make someone miss in that sort of tight windows. I think Taylor has speed, but I think in terms of the shiftiness, I trust Deuce a little more with that. You almost got there. Matthew Nez made a kick. Good job. Glad about that, Matthew. So I remember I started off the stream earlier with saying like, hey, like the first half the first team defensive line wasn't good. In the second half, the first team defensive line was really good. It was like 1.7 yards per play, and that's with the first two plays of the third quarter going for I think a combined like 19 yards. So the first two plays, you can see them getting off the ball a little quicker. Jasheen gets there just a little bit too late. But you can actually see there's like a concentrated effort versus last time where it's like, well, they're kind of just going through the motions. This is a good route, especially because Wake's playing so far off. They're just playing just a cover three and just say, hey, everyone kind of bail. And the big thing why Wake's doing that is Wake just doesn't want to give up explosives in this game. They don't want to give up explosives in general, but one of the easiest ways to let a team like this hang around is by letting them hit explosives. And I think for the time being, Wake's just going to be fine saying, look, like if our defensive line can get there quick enough, we'll give up some stuff between the 20s, and then we'll really ramp down. So it's not going to be everyone's favorite. I know people are going to be upset about it. I'd rather give up that than explosives, to be completely honest. If I can say, hey, you get me underneath the middle and then I can clamp down, fine with it. Jamari got to make that tackle. Jamari does a really good job of adjusting here. He gets off his block and does a really good job of adjusting. You got to make that tackle. You got to make it, buddy. Like, if you're going to be a starter, you have to make that tackle. And especially in a system like this where you're playing cover three, your corners have to be tackling. Jamari's usually pretty good at that. I was really shocked there. This is hilarious. I'm not really sure he was down, but I think all the rushers do well here. Kevin absorbs two, which puts Kendron on a running back, and they're like, oh wait, we can't do that. And both of them kind of collapse in. But then obviously at the top of the screen, Jasheen just wins immediately. And only so much you can do about a dude that might be a second team, first team All ACC this year. Like that's hilarious. This is just a hilarious sight. Just having him walk back in there, disgusting. The punt return. All right, so we're going to watch it first, and there's a lot that goes on. There is a lot that goes on here. The kicker just takes a terrible angle. Okay, so let's go back to the start, and we're going to point out a couple different people. First person I am going to point out is number 17 right here, Zamari Stevenson. If you just follow Zamari this entire time, he gets one guy on the ground. That's, you know what? Already getting someone on the ground, you've done a great job, Zamari. Then completely just takes out another person. Completely different person, just takes him out. That automatically opened up everything. That right there from Zamari 10 out of 10, gold star. You did great. Good job, man. So now we have Deuce down here as well. Deuce got a little close there to blocking the back. So, but we didn't. So it's fine. And then still gets a guy. But what Deuce is fast, man. He outruns Taylor here. And I know Taylor's probably not going full speed because he needs his blockers, but there is some very, very, very good blocking. Same here with Rushan Tung, Rushan's not running fast. Rushan, that's Capone. Capone is like quietly like fast. Same thing with Rushan there, because I know Rushan was here as well. See if I can find 6 before that. Yeah, you can see Rushan from like the top of the screen coming in here. Rushan might be like a top 3, 4 fast guy on the team quietly. I was looking at his speed numbers. He's fast, but that was just everyone did their jobs well. That's what you want to see. And Wake hasn't had a lot of good special teams moments, especially in the return game. Obviously they had Damon's return against Virginia Tech last year. But that was the first punt return since Dortch against Towson in, what was that, 2018, 2019? That, these are the types of plays you need them to make. Obviously, you're not going to run a kickback every time, but when you have guys like Damon and Taylor and Deuce and Donovan, you need to be able to make these plays because, obviously that pretty much changed the game here. And that'll pretty much change the game against anybody. If you run a punt back, all of a sudden you've got a lot more leeway, and now people are a little more scared to kick to you. Just being able to put that on film, like now people have to respect Taylor Moore. People are obviously going to respect Damon Claiborne when he's on kick returns, Donovan Green, etc. Putting that on film, good, and not making mistakes, good. So this is where the divide starts going. When we look at this one, and this is mostly a second team defensive line. This is mostly just a full. This is really a full second team, and they just get washed. They get washed. The linebackers don't hold the edge. Carrington Lee. This is essentially the same thing from earlier, where you thought Karen John Wayman, he makes a tackle and it's fine. Carrington doesn't make the tackle and then it's not fine. But you can notice here where that's one of the first plays that NCAT really has positive going for him, and it's against the second team. Second team defensive line. I want to make that very clear. It's defensive line again. It's 2nd and 2. And they don't get enough of a push, and now you start seeing North Carolina A&T push a little more, push a little more, push a little more. They get back to it again here, and Carrington did not have a fun game, and he just completely loses contained on the quarterback. Tried to make a play, tried to be a young hero. Don't need you to be a hero. Need you to do your job, buddy. Yeah, he played the running back, and it's like, look, Harrington, the running back is basically being run right into a linebacker. We needed you to play the quarterback here. And I think NCAT was going decently fast, and Wake didn't want to didn't sub. So this entire drive until even now is just second team defensive line, and it's putting your linebackers, your safeties, everyone's now in just a disadvantageous position. So now Wake Forest starts getting their first string back in there. I think there was timeout, and they get a player for 5 yards, and it's like, okay, maybe it's not so much that the difference between them, and that's sort of how this entire second half goes. Was there probably was a player, maybe a player or two, where the first team defensive line needed to get their feet back under them after being out for a little bit. But then on money downs, Kevin Pointer just obliterates. That is disgusting from Kevin. Just completely just gets through, and even if he doesn't get there, Jasheen wins. Like Jasheen completely won his rep. This was over. So it's just a matter of who gets there between those two first. And if by for some reason neither of them do, uh, there's a third guy in Bryce Gagnon that's there. I think Carrington wins. Not Carrington, excuse me. Kendron wins his rep with the with the left tackle. The only reason it's not all four of them converging on them is because the running back helps out. That's the only reason it's not four in there. But yeah, all three of them kind of converge, and so that's kind of what you saw. You saw they gave up they gave up a 5 yard run there. Obviously, they get nothing on second down and third down. They get home, and that's just what the second half was just them kind. It's like some disappointed parents coming in saying, "Now I got to clean up this mess," but they did it well. That's Kevin gets off the line so quickly. He gets off so good. That twist is disgusting. It's never a good sign if three people are in the backfield within like 2 seconds. I thought that Hank was going to throw this one. I thought he was going to throw. Where did that come from? I thought Hank was gonna attempt this throw to Horatio here. I thought he was gonna force it, and then either you get a tip, you get a pick, something happens there. Thought he was gonna force it. I think it's a good growth sign that he's not throwing that ball because it looks like it's the right option, but there's an even more right option here. So good. And again, those were the throws. Like I thought, the reason I thought he was gonna do it because that's all he did in practice. Not all he did, but he loves testing those limits. Him deciding to not make that throw is good. And then Taylor, I mean, again, it's a slot. It's a nickel. There's only so much to do. You just have no leverage. You have absolutely no leverage. And see, and because you've done that in the past, because you haven't thrown that one in the past, now this guy comes up, and since he comes up, you can fire it in pretty easily to there. It looks a little tighter from this angle, but this is fine. He throws it well enough ahead that it's fine. So good. That's really good. I was really impressed with what I saw from Hank compared to what he showed in practice. And when I interviewed Hank, he did talk about how he thought that practices where he wants to really push the limits of like, hey, can I make certain throws? And if you look at Hank historically, like he does get punished a bit on those. I'm not gonna sit here and say the old dog learned a new trick and said, hey, actually I'm gonna avoid these types of throws. But I do think he did in this game at least. He found a pretty solid balance of trying to attempt these tight window throws because he didn't have, at least to my knowledge, I don't believe he had a turnover worthy play in this turnover worthy pass in this one. 2024 offense passing would be yeah, that 90.3 very good. No, he had two big time throws, good. He had a couple of drops. I think one of them was Micah. You know, the sack wasn't supposed to be on him, but no, the fact that he didn't have any turnover worthy plays, and he usually has a few in there. And I think that's something that's really interesting with him is you see there's last year he had 10 turnover worthy plays, 5 picks.